You're full.
Finally.
Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Dude, you're getting a lot of heat online from all these. It's all the flat Earth people and the chemtrail people. Those are the people that are mad at you the most.
Yeah, that's my specialty. Chemtrails and flat Earth.
Yeah, well, I asked people, which is this is hilarious. I asked people online. I said, Mick West from Debunk is going to be here. What would you like me to debunk? And one of the first ones was chemtrails, because you cannot debunk it. It's real. Dun, dun, dun. I would say this to anybody who thinks that. That has got to be the most ineffective government program of all time. Like, you ask people what they're doing by spraying things in the sky, and the number one thing they'll say is, like, weather control. Weather control is one. Well, they don't have any fucking control of the weather, because if they did, they'd make it rain all over Santa Barbara and stop these fires.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage going on right now. There's a fire that's bigger than the city of Washington, D.C.
They think they're making those fires. They think that
that's right.
part of the conspiracy. Anything that happens is always part of the conspiracy.
What do you think it is? Like, what is it with conspiracies? Like, why are they so attractive to people? There's something going on with people, right?
Yeah. I think, I've been looking into this a lot.
I bet you have. Especially since you're a government shell.
Well, I'm doing research for the book I'm writing, which
Right.
is called Escaping the Rabbit Hole, and it's about how people get into the rabbit hole and how people get out of the rabbit hole. So the whole thing
Right.
is about the rabbit hole, which is something basically people get sucked into. And I think people do a lot of research into the reasons behind people getting into conspiracy theories, like the psychological reasons and the personality reasons and things
Right.
like that. But I think most conspiracy theorists are just regular people. They're just ordinary people who get sucked into something.
And why do you think that is?
Just from talking to them, they tell me like their origin stories, essentially. And they tell me what happened to them when they got into conspiracy theories. And it nearly always starts with them looking at some video. Like nowadays,
Yes.
It starts with them looking at some video, and then they just get sucked in.
Yeah.
And then they start looking at another video and another video and another video. And Facebook and YouTube is feeding them these videos, because once you start going down that road, you just can't change your trajectory.
Right. It's hard to treat.
Yeah.
I mean, YouTube, since they instigated this autoplay thing, or instituted this autoplay thing, or the next video plays immediately and they're all related.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely been a thing with people. And also, like, the suggestions on the right-hand side if you're watching one video on a particular subject.
Yeah, I was doing some experiments with that. I set up like a completely blank YouTube account, and I would just go in there and type in one thing, like contrails. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you look at contrails on YouTube, like half the videos you're going to get are going to be chemtrail videos.
Right.
And so if the first video you click on is a chemtrail video, then that just sets you down that road.
Well, I remember this was in the days, I think, before YouTube. This was in the days when maybe YouTube was around, but it just wasn't that popular. I remember me and my friend Eddie were high as fuck, and we're talking to my neighbor, and there was some plane that was flying over, and we were wondering why the clouds coming from behind this plane stood so long.
Wow.
And so I asked him. I used to have this neighbor. I used to call him Bling Bling, because Bling Bling was incapable of talking about anything other than objects. Like, all we talk about, that's a nice car. Is that a new car? Where'd you get that watch? Like, that was Bling Bling. All Bling Bling wanted to talk about is, like, material possessions. So he and I were parked in front of his. I was saying hi to him, and I said, "Hey, man, do you remember clouds like sticking around in the sky that long?" And he's like, "No, I don't know. Is that a new truck?" And like, I just remember how ironic it was, because I had told Eddie about Bling Bling. You know, that, like, this is all this guy cares about and wants to talk about. And then he did that while we were out there. But I remember thinking, man, how weird would it be if all of a sudden clouds from jet engines started appearing, and it just appeared right before our eyes, and we hadn't noticed it. But I wasn't sold. It didn't make any sense to me, because my thought on it was the amount of people that had to be involved. You're talking about all these different airplanes, get all these people to keep their mouth shut. These are they're pilots, right? So they're not making shit tons of money, and they live here too. That's the other thing. Like, if they're actually spraying something in the sky, they live here too. Like, what are they spraying themselves?
Well, the theory now is that it's basically the power elite in the country is doing these chemtrails as a kind of last-ditch attempt to maintain power before the entire world collapses into chaos. So they think it's kind of like a desperate situation.
A power grab.
Well, not exactly. They're hanging on to have their kind of last hurrah. Like really, they feel like the end of the world is nigh. Like, there's about to be this environmental disaster, and the chemtrails are the only thing that is holding everything together. That's the thing that you get if you go to like Geoengineering Watch, that Dane Whittington guy. He's basically an apocalyptic prophet now. He's basically preaching about how everything is going to end soon, and the chemtrails are the only thing that's stopping it. But they're also making it worse. So he's kind of saying like, the chemtrails are helping, but we've got to stop them, otherwise they'll make it even worse. But we're pretty much all going to die either way.
Yeah, there's a lot of money, and we're going to die. There's a lot of people that love that trope. It's just like something that gets carted out constantly throughout history, because it's true. You are going to die. It's like, when are you going to die? You don't know. So because you don't know, you're freaking out. Like, is it going to be a car accident? Is it going to be a fire? Is it going to be an earthquake? Is it going to be a slow aging death? Or is it going to be the chemtrails? Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I think that type of thing, like fear of dying, is one of those fundamental things.
Right.
That every human is hardwired with certain things that that happens in their brain without them thinking about, and fear of dying and fear of other things, fear of fear of wolves or whatever. Something that's hardwired, and that's the type of thing that leads to different types of thinking that you end up being a conspiracy theorist, in part because your brain is wired that way.
You had a great quote about chemtrails when we did that television show together. You said chemtrails are like the training wheels for conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Because they're like they're right above your head, and you just like you see them right there. For people who don't understand why jets produce clouds, please explain that, because it's very simple.
It is very simple. Jet engines have water in their exhaust. If you look at a car on a cold day and you see the exhaust coming out of the tailpipe, you'll see like a cloud of condensation sometimes, and you'll see some water coming out. And when the exact same thing happens with jet engines. And when that exhaust hits the cold air, it condenses, it freezes, it makes a cloud. And contrails are essentially clouds. They're exactly the same physically as a regular cirrus cloud. And
it's dependent upon the amount of moisture in the atmosphere, and you can actually monitor it online. NASA actually has a website that will show you, and I believe it's set up for pilots, right? Is that what or air traffic people?
NASA actually has a Contrail Forecasting site, which isn't really for pilots or anything. It's just part of their contrail research. But yeah, they have a site where it'll predict like where the contrails are going to be. But you can do it yourself. You just got to look up the relative humidity at a certain altitude. There's lots of different sites you can go to. I've got a whole bunch of them listed on Metadebunk.
And just like the clouds vary in the sky, the amount of moisture varies in the sky as well, which is one of the reasons why you will see a jet pass through one area and you will see a contrail, and then it almost looks like they shut the contrail jets off, and then you see it pick up maybe a couple hundred yards later.
Yeah, and that's, when you say like a cloud, it's really exactly the same as a cloud. If you look at any picture of a cloudy day and then just remove all the clouds, but they're still there as invisible clouds, then when the plane comes along, it's almost like the plane is the magic pen revealing these invisible clouds. Because all a cloud is a region of the sky where the humidity is above a certain level. So you know that the humidity is pretty patchy across the sky, because like there's a cloud here and right next to it there's no cloud. So where the cloud is, it's high humidity. Where the cloud isn't, it's low humidity. But if both of those were just lowered like 10%, then you get no clouds at all. Then a plane comes along, it raises the humidity in the cloud area and in the non-cloud area. But this area, because it was a bit higher, you get a trail forming, and this area you get no trail forming. So it's exactly the same as invisible clouds.
Yeah, and for people that are watching it and you're looking up, you think they're spraying something if you're conspiracy-minded. And because of a lot of the videos that are out there, in particular two that were recommended to me are what in the hell are they spraying? Right, so I got to meet with that guy that made those documentaries, and right away I knew something was wrong. Like he's either on Adderall or something. He's just like real edgy and speeded up, and just an odd guy, which is like a lot of people that are conspiratorially minded. They seem to be like they're nervous and agitated, and And when we went over like why one of the things that he was talking about was the soil samples and water samples, and that they've detected all this aluminum and barium in water, and particularly aluminum. And he's like showing me all these results that he had. But even on the very results that he showed me, it said sludge. Like he had sent them out for testing. And I said, well, what did you send? And he goes, well, I sent some water from these, ponds. And I said, but it says sludge on your testing. And he said, no, but it was water. I go, okay, but the lab said it's sludge. I go, what is sludge? He goes, well, I don't know what sludge is exactly. I go, well, let's look. Sludge is a combination of water and dirt. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you sent water and dirt. So do you know that aluminum is one of the most common metals on Earth? And you could basically scoop up a patch of dirt pretty much anywhere and find a bunch of aluminum in it. It's really, really common in trace amounts. I go, so what you did is you tested dirt, and it tested positive for being dirt. I mean,
exactly.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. And the guy was kind of freaking out. I'm like, how did you not put this together yourself? Like, if you're the guy who's making this video and you're trying to find a reason why you could, some facts that you could throw at people. We could say, hey, look, the government is definitely spraying things in the sky. They're spraying aluminum. Look, we found the aluminum, and we found it in the water. It's in your water supply. It's going to get in your body. It's going to poison you. Look, we found it in the water. How the fuck did he not look at it himself is what I was thinking. And when me and him were having this conversation, I realized, like, you have these people that go down, they're not open-minded in regards to these subjects. They go down a very narrow road, and that road is, the government is doing something to me. I need to find out what it is.
Yeah, and they're really motivated to actually find evidence.
Yes.
So that they're trying to find something, and actually trying to find an alternative explanation isn't really that attractive to them. So they find aluminum in the water or in the soil or whatever, and then they glom on to that as being, evidence of geoengineering. And that's great for them because they can just find loads and loads of samples of soil.
And that's something that gets repeated online. That very fact over and over again, the aluminum that they found in the water.
It's one of like the core tenets. It's like one of the pillars of the chemtrail thing. There's like 4 or 5 different things. Like in every conspiracy theory, there are these core beliefs that the 99% of the people who believe in the theory have.
One core belief is that you work for the government.
Yeah,
dun, dun, dun.
That is a core belief.
Mick is a retired video game creator. You could find that out. Made video games.
That's right. Tony Hawk.
Yeah, made a shit ton of money and decided to debunk dorks.
Yeah, I didn't start out, and I wouldn't refer to them as dorks.
I would. I'm saying they're dorks.
Yeah.
They're dorks if they don't believe. This is the problem. You're not a dork if you fall for something. You're a dork if you fall for something you don't believe the science that shows that it's impossible, that it's not real. Yeah. That if you were spraying aluminum in the sky, folks, it would look like aluminum, you dummy. It wouldn't look like a cloud.
It wouldn't dissipate. It would look like a thin mist, essentially.
And metal is not. It's heavier than fucking air and vapor. It's not going to just sit up there like that. It would be a very different experience. It would slowly settle to the ground and wouldn't look like a cloud. And there's no reason to do it. There's no benefit whatsoever. There's no scientific evidence ever uncovered that there's any benefit for anybody of spraying aluminum over people. It's a waste of aluminum.
That's the thing. Even with the whole geoengineering field, there's really no solid evidence that it will work. We don't know what the side effects will be. We don't know how much we would need to spray, and we don't know, if when we stop doing it, will the world bounce back in a terrible way, and it'll be a big disaster.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because one of the reasons why contrails are interesting to study is because they actually do have an effect on the temperature of the Earth, and this is something that we found out after 9/11. When September 11th happened in 2001, it was the big disaster. There was a shutdown on all flights in the United States. And when they did that, the temperature changed. Because these clouds literally do provide like a cover. And do they act as an insulator or an escalator?
They essentially act as an insulator. They block incoming radiation during the day, and they block outgoing radiation at night. But the net effect is that they actually block more outgoing radiation than they do incoming radiation. So if planes didn't fly at night, then you would cool the Earth down. You'd have to stop flying, quite a bit before nighttime. So if all the flights in the world were between 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. local time, then you could actually cool the world down by just not having any flights at night, because it's the night flights that have this really big kind of blanketing effect that stop the outgoing radiation.
So the night of flights actually heat the world up.
Yes, they do. They act like a blanket. You know how it's warmer in a cloudy day, like it doesn't get as cold at night. Deserts get really cold at night because there's nothing over them. They don't have any cover. It's one of the reasons. But yeah, the contrails will actually warm the planet because the amount of outgoing radiation they block is just way higher, just because of the wavelengths and the size of the particles and whatnot.
So that's something to be concerned about, that's something that people are legitimately monitoring. What people need to understand is just because you feel like when you look up in the sky and you see these crisscross patterns that they're spraying you. No one's spraying you.
Yeah.
This is just a natural reaction to jet engines and condensation in the atmosphere and the heat and the moisture of the jet engine. That's all it is.
They are actually talking about a way of using contrails for a kind of geoengineering. And this is something that people often get confused about, because you see these two words together, contrails and geoengineering, and they think, oh, that's chemtrails. But what they're trying to do is use air traffic control and computers and weather forecasting to make it so the planes don't fly through the contrail forming areas when they would make contrails at night, and make it so they do fly through contrail forming areas when it would make contrails during the day. So
this is a conversation they're having, or something that's actually being...
It's not something that they've actually done,
right.
But it's something that they can research fairly easily.
So if they were considering trying to heat up the atmosphere, or heat up the Earth at night, they would just fly over these moisture-rich areas, and if they weren't, they would avoid them.
Yeah, but the goal obviously is to combat climate change, global warming,
right,
and cool the Earth down. So a relatively cheap way of doing that, to a degree, is to have these planes be controlled by computers, and it kind of increases fuel costs for the airline by about 2 or 3%, because they have to make very deviations, sometimes in height and sometimes in direction. But it could actually have a significant effect on the Earth's climate if we had the entire world's airline fleets all in this program where they would fly, making contrails where they were needed and not making contrails where they were not needed.
And how exactly are they monitoring the moisture content of the atmosphere? Like, what are they using to do that? Satellites?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. They use sounding balloons, which are these weather balloons, basically, which got mistaken for UFOs quite a lot. And they use satellites, and they use planes sensing the environment when they're flying through it. And they use all these inputs, and it goes into a big computer model, which basically predicts what the humidity will be at any particular point. It's basically a big weather forecast for the upper atmosphere.